Okay, our second to last, but certainly not second to least, presentation of the day is from Nick BHARDWAJ, and he is going to talk to us about the vast array of monetization solutions over mobile and how to navigate through that.
All right, thank you. So appreciate for all of you being here. I know it's pretty late in the day, so taking out the time to see this presentation. So more or less, I kind of want to be transparent from the front, and kind of the goal of this presentation is to provide as much insight, feedback in regard to both small and large developers when it comes to understanding user acquisition and monetization platforms when it comes to mobile. Specifically in regard to my background, I actually used to be in the mobile ad industry previously before joining NaturalMotion. And it was my job to try finding developers to use our platforms for whether it is user acquisition or monetization and driving those revenues up. But now coming over and leaving the dark side over into game development, which is definitely much sexier and much more fun, I kind of want to share those insights back, because right now when I look back into the industry, there's still a very large education gap between developers and these networks. So kind of the goal in the end is to provide you more or less some of the ammunition you need in order to go back to these networks to A, negotiate better contracts, B, get real expectations on what are the revenues and user acquisition you should be getting, and third and most importantly, actually come out feeling that you're on top rather than getting screwed over by an ad network. So kind of by a quick show of hands, who's actually ever heard of NaturalMotion in general? Wow, that's much more than I actually thought, which is fairly surprising to say the least. Historically, NaturalMotion has actually been a more behind-the-scenes company. So I kind of want to go really quickly in regard to a roadmap on where we were in the past and where we are now to give you a better insight on why I can kind of talk about this topic and try to give you that feedback. So historically with NaturalMotion, we've kind of been moving more into the games industry, specifically in regard to us publishing our own games and building on our games. But historically, we were actually created one of the strongest animation engines in the industry, utilized by console game developers specifically. And we've had core partners such as Rockstar Games and Grand Theft Auto 4 utilizing our character animation, Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, which is the most successful Star Wars game out of all console games in history, and of course one of my favorites, Red Dead Redemption. And our animations utilized for all the character animations, character development within the games from some of these core partners. But then we kind of realized that we wanted to utilize our own engine and see what we can do with it on our own. And this kind of brought us to premium mobile gaming, was actually one of the major areas that we started off with. Our first game that we built was Backbreaker Vengeance. This is pretty much an American football game where it's a premium game where you paid 99 cents was the price point in the US, 69 pence in UK, etc. And it actually ended up being a massive hit. It actually ended up us releasing Backbreaker 2 Vengeance as well. Both of these titles crossed over 5 million premium downloads on the market, and every premium game we've released, including these two, NFL Rivals and Jenga, have all reached top 5 overall in the iPhone and the Apple market. But then we wanted to explore a new opportunity, and that's kind of where we've taken it today, and that's freemium mobile gaming. So this is our horse. My Horse is kind of our core app. It's our first freemium app and first foray. I feel very manly behind this game. It really characterizes where we are. But My Horse has been a massive success. And more importantly, it kind of allowed us to learn quite a bit about the industry when it comes to freemium, but more importantly, what we need to do in order to develop that into an own business within NaturalMotion Games. So kind of looking behind the numbers when it comes to My Horse, officially we're announcing that we've crossed over 8 million downloads on iOS with My Horse. We still are maintaining to this day 500,000 daily active users, 2 million sessions as well. And we've of course been featured by Apple in various categories. This is currently our icon, of course, in honor of Valentine's Day. As I'm sure many speakers have mentioned that you're always changing your icon, adding new updates when it comes to seasonal. So Christmas was the previous icon. I think we also had an Halloween icon as well. And we've been featured, and that's been great by Apple. That's definitely the holy grail when it comes to this. Well, in those 8 million downloads, we learned quite a bit, and that's kind of some of the information that we want to share with you today. So the reason why I kind of titled this Mobile Madman, it was actually after the show. One of the things I've kind of realized, and as I mentioned earlier, is that it is kind of an elite society when it comes to the ad networks. No one really knows the numbers games. No one really knows a lot of the information behind it when it comes to mobile. So my goal is trying to, share as much insight as possible, but at the end, kind of give that value back to all developers, whether small or big. So kind of the summary and overview that we're going to be looking at is first and foremost are kind of the KPIs that we at NaturalMotion utilize on a daily basis in regard to make better strategies when we partner up with specific networks. Next, we'll just go over all the third-party platforms when it comes to monetization. When I say all, we'll look them in genres and then kind of look at some of the key companies, but I won't go in too much detail. If I left your company out, you could yell at me later. Next, we'll go to user acquisition. And then most importantly, I really want to share with a lot of you is kind of what are the expectations and negotiations that you should be doing as a developer. So more importantly, what are the revenue you should be expecting? Like what is the real revenue, not the, the outlier that one of the networks will share with you in regard to that some developer made $1 billion off their network. Rather, what is the real expectations behind it? So hopefully from that, at the end, I would love questions in regard to your specific game. If you want to share some of your metrics and say, what are your best strategies that you'd recommend, I'd be more than happy to answer. The only thing I won't answer is don't ask specific stuff we've done at NaturalMotion. But outside of that, I'm definitely open to share a lot of information. So just kind of getting into it. It's the monetization industry standards. I'm sure you've already heard many of these, but these are kind of the key ones that I utilize on a daily basis. There's actually a list of 30 I utilize on a daily basis, but these are the main ones I always am looking at on my phone. First is ARPU, the average revenue per user. Next is RPU, which is the average revenue per paying user. Next is the percentage of paying users. Next is ARPDAU, average revenue per daily active user. And then, of course, is the retention metrics. I specifically am looking at 7 and 30 days. A lot of people will add in 24-hour, 5-day, 7-day, 14-day. Whatever floats your boat. Realize you can utilize any metric in the end as long as it's serving some value back to you. Make sure you understand what you're trying to evaluate with it. So kind of getting into the nitty-gritty, it's more or less the monetization platform. So when I am focusing in this presentation, it is catered towards freemium game developers. I mean, if you do have a paymium model, some of these stuff will work for you on the premium side, but the core focus is freemium. So I do put a lot of text, but I don't want to read off of it. I more or less want to put a lot of text for individuals who might miss the presentation or want access to the deck so you could review a little bit later. But when it comes to third-party monetization platforms, there's kind of 4 major ones that you're looking at. First and foremost are those banner and interstitial ads, the full screen takeovers. Next, which is a little bit of a cloudy area, specifically only because Apple's banned a few of these, is the offer wall platforms. Third is branded and sponsor platforms. These are the new young ones where you're trying to get the deeper engagement. This is where you get Coca-Cola to put an in-app purchase in your game and then serve it with a video and then serve it with a further engagement in the back of your game as well. These are really interesting. They do require really deep integration, but what's great about them, the payouts are immense. Lastly, and of course, they're kind of thriving at the moment, are video platforms. And more or less, CPV is kind of the platform they utilize as cost per view. So I want to quickly go over all the acronyms I utilize right here. CPC is cost per click. CPM is cost per 1,000 impressions or cost per mil. CPI is cost per install. CPE is just something made up by most networks now, and what you'll see is that a lot of these acronyms are starting to get created quite on a daily basis, but in this case, we'll be utilizing CP as cost per engagement, and then CPV is cost per view. So really the ecosystem is wide and diverse, and I'm not saying that you need to completely destroy your game and put all 4 of these platforms in at the same time. Rather, you want to find the right fit, the right need, but more importantly, what provides the most value back to your users. So let's just go down the line. Banner and interstitial platforms. These are kind of 6 of the big players. There's thousands of companies in there, so don't get me wrong. These are just some of them that I like, I guess. So AdMob, iAd, Millennial Media, Playhaven, Flurry, and Chartboost. I've had strong communication with all of these 6. I don't have a specific recommendation here. If you want one, feel free to ask afterwards. But what's interesting about these, that these are some of the core leaders when it comes to serving banner ads in your game, but more importantly, interstitial ads, which are starting to grow immensely, only because of the higher rates when it comes to revenues. So, let's go to the pros and cons, and when it comes to a lot of these platforms. Banner and interstitial review. The pros here is you're always going to get high fill rate. These guys have so many ads, and this is pretty much the standard when it comes to the industry. So if you're ever worried that your game has way too many impressions and you can't fill it, this is a very easy way to go. More importantly, it's very straightforward in regard to you're getting money no matter what. In regard to the impression base. As long as you know how many impressions you're serving, you should know the expected eCPM rate here as well. Why a lot of developers tend to utilize this is that it doesn't really require deep integration or deep engagement. You're just putting an overlay on your game when it comes to taking part of the UI and the UX. Rather than actually going deeper in regard to giving out currency or finding natural breakages of play, you can just pretty much slap it wherever you want. If you really hate your users, this is a great way to go. But what you see is that there's the rise of interstitial ad platforms, which is really interesting to me. Some of those leaders, as I showed before, like Chartboost and Playhaven. And what these guys are also doing is that if you find a natural breakage of play in your game, you can serve a full page interstitial. So say if you have a game that's based on levels and the user complete the level, that's a natural breakage of play. The game is stopped. You can actually serve an ad there. And it's not as disruptive. And what you also see is that they're leading on the eCPM side and giving you much stronger revenue. But now let's look at the cons of these, right? The payouts suck. I mean, honestly, if you're just looking for $500 or $1,000, like, go ahead. But again, they're just not that strong. You could be optimizing with various other monetization platforms. But I think the most important thing is that, especially I think a lot of indie game developers will agree, you usually don't want to destroy your game experience by overlaying banner ads everywhere you go. If you play Words with Friends, I hate that game. Everywhere I go, I think I played the game for 20 minutes and I got served 44 ads. That's just the worst user experience I've ever felt. And that's the truth, is that you're going to get that same experience with your game. So it really comes down to whether or not you could find that right placement, but more importantly, get that revenue as well. And that becomes a little bit more of a challenge when it comes to developers. The other problem you have is you tend to have low control of the inventory. All these networks will actually tell you, yeah, you could blacklist, and you could say if you don't want this ad in, you could take it off. But the biggest problem is if you go to certain of these networks, they have thousands, and I'm just way too lazy to sit there and review every single ad unit out there, that I'm not going to be able to block every single one. And if it doesn't really fall into our demographics, you're going to get really poor performance. So with our game, My Horse, we've utilized ads in that before, and I wasn't able to control the full inventory of some of these platforms when we were testing it. So some kids were getting weird ads for poker, gambling, and adultfriendfinder.com. That's not the best to be putting into our game, especially when our game's actually played with families. We actually have parents playing with their kids. And we see it in the reviews, and it sucks to see that. It's like, stop showing ads to my kid about gambling. And that's right, we shouldn't, and we need to control that inventory. And one of the problems we've seen with these type of platforms, it's hard to control it. So until you really see that self-serving platform, or unless you don't care about your users, this could be a problem that you'll be facing. More importantly, the analytics are weak. We are a very analytical company. I'm not going to say I'm like Zynga, where we're an analytics company first, then games second. Games still drive us, but analytics do play a role. And some of these don't really provide you that. They give you the really basics, the raw numbers in the front. You'll get eCPM data, you'll get the total revenue you make, maybe total impressions, and that's about it. And that's kind of a little deep. It's not as deep as you'd like, but more importantly, it's really raw, and you can't do any further analysis. Some of the stuff you actually want to see is, how many of those users are you actually losing to the ads? How does it affect your retention, your daily active users, the sessions that they're playing, because they're seeing ads on a daily basis. And unfortunately, when you put these in, you're not getting it, so you have to have something on your own end. Overall, what are the revenue expectations? Here are real revenue expectations that I've seen from working with 10 different companies. When it comes to banner ads, your real revenue on an eCPM basis is between 1 to 4 on banner ads. The highest I've ever seen it optimized was $550, but that was only because of one company, and I'm going to call them out, Groupon. They overpay for everything. Oh my God, whoever is in charge of that user acquisition needs to be fired. But they were paying like at one point $3 per install, 50 cents per click. Like, I've never seen stuff like this before. And outside of those outliers, these are really where your numbers are going to rest. And that's what's key to understand, is what is real expected revenue that you're going to be getting. But then when it comes to full page interstitials, I've been having a lot of success with these. This is kind of ranging between $3 to $10. Specifically in my experience, I've seen eCPMs around $15 when it comes to full page interstitials. And if I'm only doing an iPad only campaign, I've seen them as high as $35. And that's over about 500,000 impressions, which is a very significant amount of money when you start thinking about it in those terms. And these are real numbers that you're getting. So it could be an opportunity for you, specifically if you have a game that isn't monetizing well, but has a lot of users in it, a lot of sessions, you might want to be taking this approach. Let's go to the next one, offer wall platforms. This is kind of the dark, mysterious / I don't know if I want to go that way route specifically. Specifically when it comes to Tapjoy and offer wall platforms, Tapjoy has been banned historically in the past when it comes to these type of platforms for one specific action, and that was incentivized installs. So make sure if you're ever going down that offer wall route, you're trying to remove incentivized installs from that specific guideline. But let's go into the kind of the overall pros and cons. These are extremely high eCPM rates, but I think what the greatest thing that you're going to be getting from offer wall platforms is that you're making money off users who are that you're looking to continually engage with, right? So with an offer wall platform, users are able to complete an action to earn currency that's only good for your game, meaning that they're willing to give you money in order to play further in your game. You're not losing this user out to another banner ad and interstitial ad, which makes it really interesting and really engaging, because you're now providing them access to your soft currency or premium hard currency in order to monetize that user back. So it makes it a very interesting option for a lot of users. The cons here, Apple hates it. They really do. Apple's already made blasts about it. More importantly, especially when incentivized installs are included, they also hate certain companies behind it. So it makes it an issue whether or not you're trying to grow out there. More importantly, the inventory is unstable. The real reason why a lot of these ad networks, a lot of game developers utilize services such as offerwalls is that they're just trying to get downloads for a burst. So they might pay for a lot of downloads for a 2-day period, but then that inventory disappears afterwards. So it becomes really unstable. So unless your offerwall platform really has a strong BD department, you might be worried in regard to the actual expected revenues you'll see. So in regard to the expectations, right now the eCPM, and this is calculated in regard to when a user actually opens up the offerwall and gets to that offerwall page. The average is right now between $25 to $100. The reason why this range is so big is because it's really depending on your game and how well your hard and soft currency is. I only recommend offerwall platforms if you do have that dual currency model, or at least a single virtual currency at the minimum. If you're not utilizing that, offerwalls probably aren't for you. More importantly, how do you put those numbers into real revenue? Well, this is another way to think of it. You could actually be getting around $500 to $3,000 per day per 100,000 DAUs with an offerwall platform. These are the numbers that you're seeing across the board. Because a lot of people will have the questions, if I integrate an offerwall, how many people will actually interact with it? What's the real revenue possibility? You're not seeing every one of your users going back to an offerwall. So this is kind of the landscape there. Video platforms. This is kind of getting new. It's kind of picking up a lot of steam. Kind of a couple companies that are really making an interesting push, being AdColony and Flurry here. I think the one interesting about video views is that if you do have those natural breakages of play, you can put a 15-second to 30-second ad in and get decent revenue as well. It's very similar to a banner ad if you start doing force completed views. I think that's a terrible option, but that's up to you. Mainly because force completed views really kill the experience if you don't allow a user to skip. I mean, if you're really that desperate for money, I'm not too sure video views are the way to go. But what are the pros here? You're getting really above average eCPMs. It tends to average between 15 to 30, but the real one is 10 to 40 is kind of what you're looking in regards to the actual expectations. The other thing is that you could also incentivize views, which is kind of another way around Apple, where you're not doing incentivized installs. You're only doing incentivized views, and Apple's okay with that as long as you're not messing with their app ecosystem. So what you could do is you could provide a user 5 coins, 1 gem, or something like that to complete a view. And after the view is done, they unlock it, and you could earn them that currency. So again, it goes back to that same offerwall philosophy. You could earn currency, and you could earn revenue off a user in order to keep them maintain their engagement within the app. The cons here, very low fill rates. This is still a very new industry, and a lot of individuals are having difficulty providing strong eCPMs and strong brands in. But more importantly, the majority of your inventory are competitive games. So I've done a test before, a lot of our competitors were the exact pet genre games that I've seen that are competitive to my horse. And it's a little tough giving it to, a TinyCo, a Zynga, my user base, right directly for them, for like a 3-cent cost per view. So it's something that you do want to be conscious about in regard to the brands that you are partnering with and where are your users going. So kind of the revenue expectations, again at the bottom, 10 to 40 eCPM is what you're seeing. eCPM is actually calculated when the user completes the view. This isn't a real eCPM in regard to when you serve the video and provide them a yes or no. This is only if you're doing force completed views. So this is where an eCPM could be skewed. Branded and real reward platforms are getting a lot of push specifically in Silicon Valley and getting a lot of funding there as well. What we're seeing from branded and real rewards is that companies such as Keep, TapMe, and GiveMeWorld are trying to give you real items, whether it's actually like a bag of chips, movie tickets, weird stuff. I don't know what else there is out there. But it's interesting because it's another level of engagement, and they're trying to match it in regard to different points of view and giving those branded experiences back. Pros here is that I like getting real items. I want to get something out of a game I'm playing, so if they're willing to give me candy or food, I'll talk to them. But the cons here is that they're all very early. They're all very early. They don't have a strong BD team, so you don't know what the stability is. But again, that kind of reverses back to a pro as well, because that means you could go back to them and have fun on the rev share and actually calculate better rev shares for you because they need you more than you need them. So it could be a good opportunity to be an early adopter. Revenue expectations, I don't know. If you know, please tell me. I want to know if I want to use one of these partners, but at this moment, we haven't tested any of them out. I haven't seen any real tests or real numbers coming out as well. So don't be afraid to ask questions. This is an actual email between me and Ad Colony. Ad Colony is great. This is not a negative thing against them at all. They had sent me a very simple deck in regard to what their platform is, and I went to town on it. And this was only 7 questions. We then followed up with a phone call where I had another 33 questions. The key is I want to know what your real numbers are, and the biggest problem you'll see in the ad world is that no one's giving you real numbers. It's very shady, and more importantly, you don't know if they're statistically valid. So you want to ask as many questions as possible. If they are giving you that one outlier, right, in their case study, you want to make sure you know that. You want to know what the real expectations are. And that was kind of the key. I wanted to know where their stats were coming from, what their real results were, and then again, what would my expectations be when I use it? So don't be afraid. If you don't know, go to town, send them an email, get on a call, have fun, ask as many questions. It doesn't matter if you sound stupid. They need you more than you need them. So they'll answer your dumb questions in order to get your business. So have a little bit of fun with it. On the negotiation side, rev share is kind of the more interesting thing. Majority of these options and majority of these opportunities are working on a rev share basis, which makes it interesting for you because this is where your first negotiation starts. Majority of them start off at a 50-50 rev share. That's low. Your minimum should be 60-40, and you really should be striving for 70-30 depending on the opportunity there. I'll be honest, you know what I strive for when I work on behalf of NaturalMotion? 99-1. I do not like giving networks any of my money. Do I get 99-1? No. But I have gotten 90-10, and I've gotten 95-5 before. So it makes it really interesting in regard to what are the revenue shares you can get. But more importantly, when you're doing it, don't settle. Go for it. You have an opportunity to walk away. For each of these platforms I showed you another 5 companies who do the exact same thing. Not one of them have a real grasp or overhaul on the entire ecosystem here, so feel free to walk away. Next is never sign long-term exclusives. There's quite a few companies doing this, and they actually sign long-term exclusives to your entire company, not even to your own specific title. If you sign this, you might as well sign your life away. If any of you want to sign one, let me know. I'll take advantage of you at this point. I mean, the real fact is, it's not of any value to you when you're trying to build a company out, because you lose any leverage in the future. But more importantly, the ecosystem changes every single day. In 3 months, one of these companies could be gone. In 3 months, a new company could arise. And if you're already stuck in that long term, you're not getting that money back. You're not able to switch. Lock in some guarantees. Get something from them. Most people don't do this. If it is an ad network who does publishing and advertising, and you're going to be coming on as a publisher, get some free installs. Ask them to throw it in. 5,000, 10,000, heck, 100,000. I don't really care. Ask what it is, and you'll get a little bit because there's a lot of room there. Then get creative and go for the throat. I love doing it. I don't like ad networks, even though I come from there, and I like going for that 90-10. You should be doing the same. Like I said, don't be afraid to walk away. But more importantly, get the numbers you really do deserve, and realize that you could play one and the other off one another in order to get the real ones. Lastly is test, and test some more. See the networks that actually are performing well on your end and which ones are actually bringing the revenue in. Once you kind of get that aspect down, you'll really be able to bring a lot of the revenue in. So I know I might be running out of time. No, we're okay. If you need to leave, feel free to do so. I'm now going into the other side, user acquisition. Thankfully, there's no one else after this. So again, if you have to leave, I definitely understand. So let's talk about user acquisition. I think the biggest issue when it comes to user acquisition is people don't understand the industry in regard to the quality of installs. There are a huge gap in regard to the quality of installs you're getting from a lot of these specific partners. Kind of the 4 different breakdowns are right now incentivized, the lowest quality install you can get. This is where a user has another incentive to download your app, whether they earn currency in another game, getting cash from some other weird location, I don't know. But they will never want to interact. This has low retention, low monetization, and of course, just low engagement across your board. You're not getting anything from these users. Next are non-incentivized. These are like banner ads, this is interstitial ads, these are video ads as well. These are strong quality and they tend to mirror similar quality as your organic download. So right now from the tests I've seen is that when it comes to non-incentivized downloads, they mirror about 75% of the quality of the organic installs. So that could actually factor in when you are trying to find the right price point. Next are kind of these free app networks. These kind of work better if you're a premium game moving to freemium at the moment, but they also do provide some services for freemium apps. The two, FAD is most likely the most common known one. There's a few other smaller ones too. These again have slightly higher quality. Right now I'm ranging them between 80 to 85% of organic installs. The biggest issue with FAD type of networks right now is that you get the engagement, but you don't get the monetization. There's a reason these users want free apps. They don't like paying. That's not a customer behavior that they're used to. So you might be a little bit low on that front. Last and foremost is organic. Users who find your app via the App Store, via virality, via social media channels. These are the strongest and these are the ones you want to aim for. Here are kind of all the payment options you can utilize when you're trying to acquire users for your app. Do not use CPC. Cost per click is the worst form. That is throwing money away. The conversion for that is lower than 10%. So unless you're able to get like insanely low CPC rates, they tend to never back out. CPM is okay if you're a high quality app or a premium app as well, because it does allow you to justify the ROI positive measure here, because you could easily see if you're acquiring a user at 65 cents and then, but the app will actually net you 70 cents after Apple's cut. You've technically made 5 cents. I don't know if that's enough for you to actually go down that road, but it is at least your ROI positive. CPV is more or less the interesting one. I haven't had success with the video model yet because I think the price points are a little bit too high, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But the easiest and most straightforward is the cost per install. Always buy the install directly because then you know what the price point is. But more importantly, if you find the higher quality installs, you can justify the price point as you move up. So incentivized installs, these have been banned on iOS, supposedly. They really haven't. When I say they really haven't is that there's kind of 2 existings in regard to incentivized installs still when it comes to iOS. First and foremost, when the ban occurred in April, what it was, the ban really wasn't taking any apps already out of the market when it comes to incentivized installs or who had the incentivized installs on their offer wall. The ban really was saying is that if you then start from that point on, integrating offer walls within incentivized installs, we won't approve you. So what you've seen is that apps who actually had these incentivized install offer walls already in their application, they actually then just never updated it, never put a new approval in, or never submitted anything new. So their apps are actually still live since April in the exact same stature, but still have an offer wall going. So there's still some remnant inventory there. The other way you're seeing incentivized installs is services such as Tapjoy on iOS, providing a mobile web app is kind of their new workaround. Which is somewhat interesting, and they actually officially lowered their price point to 10 cents now if you want an incentivized install. I still wouldn't even pay 10 cents, I'll be honest, but if you do want to go down that route. But it is interesting, you do get users in really large amounts because Tapjoy does command a lot of inventory and a few of these networks as well when it comes to iOS and Android. But in the end, what you could do is you could actually download or purchase the right amount of downloads you want in order to reach the top ranks. In the previous presentation, and I'm sure you've seen it other ways, it right now is estimated to reach the top 10 to have 70 to 80,000 downloads for freemium apps in the US App Store. Well, you know what? You can go buy them now. And you could get there and then get organic installs due to that visibility there. And that's kind of the value what these incentivized install props are providing you. Cons here, low retention, no monetization, and of course, it's never ROI positive unless you buy enough to get to the charts. That's the key here. If you want to use incentivized installs, buy enough to get to the top of the charts. Get that exposure, get that view, get to the top 10, top 5, top 25, if you even want to come close to ROI positive. But the truth is, it's really tough when it comes to incentivized install networks. Next are non-incentivized interstitials and kind of the installs from there, from banner ads. These are great. The problem is the price points are still too high. There are kind of two major factors attributing to the high price points. First and foremost is the lack of knowledge and kind of the lack of education when it comes to the industry. Since there's really no clear price point, right? Installs aren't traded on the market, so you don't know how much they really cost. A lot of these networks will drive up that price against you. They'll tell you you should be paying $1.50 and you'll believe it. I've seen numerous companies who are moving from social to mobile who had no clue about the price prop on mobile, that they still thought the exact same acquisition price on Facebook would occur on mobile. That's not the case. You don't have to pay $3 to acquire a user. But unfortunately, due to that education gap, they were paying $3 when they came to mobile. And that inflated the price points quite high. And that's when you start seeing price points between 30 cents to $2. At NaturalMotion, I don't pay more than 30 cents. I save 50 cents here to be nice, but I don't pay more than 30 cents. Because the truth is that inventory exists. You do have to aggregate, you do have to find it, and you have to be a little bit tough with what you're trying to do. But if you are a little bit more in regard to the, I want to say, treasure finder slash, if you're looking to go deeper into these networks, you can find some really great installs. Again, the cons here are still, it's a very high price point when it comes to these non-incentivized interstitials, so I still have that worry there. Again, the same thing with video installs. Video installs aren't backing out to the price point you want. More importantly, what you see is that when you're trying to convert how much you're paying per view to how many views it takes to an install, right now I'm seeing the CPI price point backing out to about $1.50 to $2, which is fairly high when it comes to iOS installs right now. But more importantly, what these networks are going to try telling you is that the quality of the users are 2x, 3x, 4x higher. The truth is it isn't. These are users who probably won't buy as much as your organic users. Organic will always still be the highest quality. So until you start doing tests, I'd be hesitant about going into the CPV realm. Free app networks, I hate these. When it comes to FAD, they do have so much power. They drive, I think, at least 5 apps to the top 10 a week at this point because they do have that huge inventory. But outside of that, unless you're a premium going to freemium, you're not going to be getting that type of potential. So watch out. But more importantly, if you are going to pay a price point to use them, understand what the value prop is behind them. How many impressions are they going to show? How many installs are you going to be getting? And more importantly, what are your expectations in regard to rank? If you kind of get those details back, it might make it it'll make it a safer proposition to move forward. Organic installs, these are the highest quality. You really want to aim for these, and any way you can get them, whether it's visibility through the charts or get the holy grail of being featured by Apple. Oh God, that has so much power. I wish there's a way I could get featured every single day and I will have to do nothing for my job again. And that's the key, right? You do want to have that feature with Apple, and it requires you to really build that communication with them, but also make great apps. I hope none of you are cloners. I'm sure you've heard of CloneGate and everything like that, right? But if you're going to clone an app, there's a very good chance you won't get featured. But if you do something unique, do something genuine, Apple's going to give you an opportunity to get featured in their app store and get that visibility you're looking for. Because on average, once we've been featured by Apple, we reach, on average, number 5 overall in the US. That just drives an insane amount of installs. So I hope they keep doing it for this app and all future apps as well. Lastly, when it comes to user acquisition, you need to source, track, and optimize across the board. Not enough people are doing this. If you're buying installs from a specific network, understand what their real value is. Understand how they're affecting your KPIs. And of course, understand what the revenue is. Are you ROI positive from that user acquisition source? And that requires you to test. So I think one real interesting way to put it was from a recent research from W3I. What they did is on the left side is all the specific cohorts they're getting from a specific user acquisition source. On the right side is their day 30 retention rate from each specific cohort. So if we look at the top of the cohort, there was one cohort that brought in 77,000 installs, and it had a 6% day 30 retention. Not bad, the second highest. But if you look at the second source that was at 64,000 installs, it had a 2% retention. Holy crap, you should never use them again. That is the worst retention rate I've ever seen, and you want to cut them out. But then look even further down. There was a source that we only got 17,000 installs, but it had the highest retention. This means I should be going back to that source, buying as many installs from them because they're getting the highest retention out of any of my user acquisition. But realize you don't have to only plug in day 30 retention rate. Plug in any of your KPIs here and kind of do the same type of source analysis. Whether it's ROI, average revenue per user, ARPDAU, 7-day retention, whatever it is, and then see which of the user acquisition sources are right now winning out. By doing that, you'll really be able to win. But of course, you might need an analytic provider. Here are some, again, just name dropping at this point. Flurry, Mixpanel, AppsLar, Kissmetrics, Contagion. Flurry's the easiest because it's free and you don't have to do anything. Contagion's the most robust, but it's the most expensive. So again, you have to make your decision here. Lastly, aggregate, aggregate, aggregate. You have to utilize more than one source. Everyone will tell you this. You know, Tapjoy is not going to bring you all your inventory. You want to use weird sources. Currently, in the last 2 months, I've met with 144 different platforms. I'm probably want to use about 20 of them because what I've realized is I could buy the lowest price points from each of them, get 5,000 installs from the networks. But that means that as an aggregate, that could be 100,000 installs per day at the lowest price point. And I'm still achieving the key goals that I want in the end. And that's really what's key. More importantly, understand your KPIs and always aim to be ROI positive. You don't have to buy users at negative ROI. You don't have to fall into this weird VC world where users are king. It really doesn't have to fall that way because there are opportunities to make that money. So kind of in summary, developers are in control and you need to take that control back. Ad networks will tell you that they're the only ones who can help you make money. That's the biggest BS I've ever heard. There's so many of them out there. You want to utilize them to your advantage, not the other way. But be aggressive with publisher negotiations. Go down for that 90-10. Have fun with it. The earlier they are, the better is the opportunity of the rev share for you. More importantly, give something back. Say if you are going to a Flurry, and they're willing to give you a 90-10, give them something in return, whether it's 100,000 guaranteed impressions per day, right? You want to be able to barter, but also make sure that you have a real mutual partnership since you'll be working together. Of course, constantly review and track. I will say this to the end. I love this. I'm not analytics, but now I am because I'm in this kind of focus at this point. Lastly, bet big on the sources that work. What are you really optimizing? And of course, make that cash money. That's really what it comes down to. You want to be ROI positive across the board. So hopefully in the end, if you do have any questions, feel free to let me know. Again, if you want to reach me, that is actually my personal email address, nick.bhardwaj@naturalmotion.com. If you want to go to a personal email, it's just nick.bhardwaj@gmail.com. I really don't care. Twitter's @nicklukin. And then also, this is our CEO, Torsten Ryle. This guy is a brilliant person. He's the reason I came to this world. I highly recommend you follow him, but also learn a little bit from him and feel free to ask him questions too when it comes to the game side and the game development side. So kind of, I hope to have added some value when it comes to these networks. I know I couldn't be as specific to many of your needs, but if you do have any of those specific questions, feel free to ask. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
Two things. First, what do you think is it useful to use like site overtakes at Touch Arcade or something like that to get the attention of Apple?
Okay.
Or use them at all?
So the question was, is it valuable to take site overtakes such as Pocket Gamer or Touch Arcade in regard to getting, I guess, exposure for your application or your company? I've only seen it done twice where I've seen the results. It's always negative ROI positive. If anything, yeah, you're not going to get the installs and the value you want out of it. I can't really speak to how well Apple picks it up or what the value is there and whether or not it'll get you a feature or it'll get you that exposure. That's something you'll definitely want to talk about a little bit closer with an Apple team or an Apple reviewer. But in the end, right, it just doesn't come down to the right price point. A lot of the people who are going to those type of sites aren't actual gamers. They're more or less company CEOs and executives who play your game to test it, but you're not going to monetize off that. And more importantly, the installs that you're getting from them are still very low. So you're not going to be coming out from an ROI positive level from my experience. But feel free to prove me wrong if you've done it.
Yeah, just so that Apple is always having a look at these websites, what gets featured.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is what gets featured is what you send into Apple. You want to make sure you have that right relationship, sending them high resolution screenshots, making sure that they know where your product path is, when's an expected release, so that they have you on their timetable, right? I mean, you do have to listen to them, right? They are the mighty God when it comes to this, the Apple ecosystem. So you want to build that relationship out in order to get as much benefits there.
Yeah, for the first time, it's always hard.
Yeah, of course, definitely. Yeah. Oh, wait, we're out of time. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you so much.